Hi, my name's Janelle and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing how to make this adorable puffed sleeve top. I purchased this top from H&M towards the end of last year, and if you've been watching my channel for a while, you'll know that I don't often purchase items of clothing, but I just had to try this one on when I saw it, and once I tried it on, I just had to purchase it because I just thought it was so adorable, and I thought that if I purchased it, I'd be able to have a go at replicating it so I could add more tops like this one to my wardrobe. So let's get into it and let me show you how to make a top similar to this one here. Let's start by taking a closer look at the top I'm going to be replicating in this video. The top itself is actually pretty simple, and as I mentioned, it has the most amazing puffy sleeves. It also has a really lovely keyhole detail at the back with some ties that can be made up into a bow, which is something I'll also be showing how to do in this video. The fabric I'm using for my top is a simple quilter's cotton in the most amazing shade of burnt orange that I love, and you'll need about 1 meter of fabric for this project. You will also need a copy of my Rosery pattern to make this top. It's available in either paper or digital form, and I'll have a link to it down in the description below. First, let's pattern hack the Rosery pattern to create a template for this top. Take the bodice back piece and from the underarm point of your size, widen the pattern piece along the bottom edge by 2 sizes, which works out to be about 2 centimeters or 3/4 of an inch. Do the same for the front piece, measuring from the point of the dart instead. Then cut the rest of the pattern piece out in your regular size. To make the puffy sleeves, you're going to need to download my free big sleeve template, which you can find a link to in the description. You can mix and match this sleeve pattern with any of my Rosery Apparel sewing patterns, by the way. And to give my sleeves even more puffiness, I decided to cut the template out at the largest size. If you're making one of the larger sizes already, then simply add about 5 centimeters or 2 inches to the outside of the pattern piece like this. And you should now have all of the template pieces you'll need to make this top. Place both the bodice front and back pieces onto the fold of your fabric and pin them in place. Then take a measuring tape and a water erasable pen or some tailor's chalk and measure approximately 10 centimeters or 4 inches from the bottom of both template pieces. This will lengthen the bodice of the top and add a bit of extra fabric for hemming later. So you should now have a bodice front and back piece that looks like this. The sleeve piece is also going to be cut on the fold, but again, to add a bit of extra fabric for some extra puffiness, I placed it approximately 2.5 centimeters or an inch away from the edge. So you should now have 2 extra large sleeve pieces like this. Next, let's make the keyhole on the back piece. With the back bodice piece still folded in half, mark approximately 10 centimeters or 4 inches from the neck edge and approximately 1.5 centimeters or a little over half an inch from the folded edge. Then mark a kind of curved shape along those measurements like this. Then, while still folded in half, cut along the marked out line on the bodice back to create a keyhole shape like this. Next, take the front bodice piece and using a water erasable pen or some tailor's chalk, mark out the points of the dart. Then fold and pin the darts. And stitch them in place. Once stitched, tie the threads of the dart into a double knot and then iron them flat towards the bottom edge of the top. The darts will create a bit of shape at the bust. Next, with right sides together, place the back piece onto the front and pin and stitch in place along the shoulders. I then like to overlock my raw edges, but you can use a simple zigzag stitch instead if you don't own an overlocker. Now let's make that keyhole detail at the back of the top. For this part, you're going to need some bias binding. I'm going to be making some out of the same fabric as my top, but you can use some store-bought bias binding instead if you like. To make bias binding, simply cut a length of fabric along the bias, and then use a bias binding maker to fold and press the fabric into bias binding. These bias binding making tools are super handy when you can't find bias binding in the shade or fabric that you need, and they are so easy to use. Take your bias binding and fold and press it in half, and then sandwich the raw edge of the keyhole into the folded bias binding and pin in place. It is a little bit tricky to get the fabric and the bias binding to sit in place, so I recommend using lots of pins for this bit. Then carefully stitch the bias binding in place, securing the raw edge of the fabric nicely inside as you stitch. Take another length of bias binding that is approximately 130 centimeters or 51 inches long, and that is again folded and pressed in half. Then find the center of the piece. Starting at the center of the bodice front, again sandwich the raw edge of the top into the folded bias binding, using as many pins as you need to secure it in place. Cut the end of the bias binding into a point and then fold and tuck the raw edge of the binding to the inside. Then stitch it in place, securing the raw edge of the fabric inside the folded binding as you stitch. Give the binding a bit of a press and you should now have a cute tie-up keyhole detail that looks like this. Let's take a moment to talk about the sponsor of this video, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for curious and creative type people. If you enjoy watching my videos and other channels like mine, then you are going to love Skillshare. On Skillshare, you can find classes on a huge range of different topics, including sewing, fashion, design, illustration, craft, photography, and the platform is curated to make it easy for you to learn new and practical skills, meaning there are no ads to interrupt your learning, and there are new and inspiring classes being added to the platform all the time. I've recently been taking a class called Everyday Flowers by Spencer Falls from The Unlikely Florist, and it has been such a beautiful and fun class to watch. It was really interesting to see what the life of a florist is like, and I learned so many tips on how to create a beautiful floral arrangement properly, which I'm so excited to put into practice next time I want to gift my friends some flowers. If you'd like to explore Skillshare for yourself, then the first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will receive a free trial of Skillshare Premium membership. And then after that, it costs less than $10 a month for the annual subscription. Thanks Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Next, with right sides together, fold the back of the top onto the front and pin and stitch them together along the side edges. Now it's time to make the sleeves. Set the length of your sewing machine to the longest possible setting and stitch 2 rows of gathering stitches along the top edge of the sleeve in between the 2 notches. Then, with right sides together, fold the sleeve in half and pin and stitch along the side edge. Press the seam flat, and then hem the raw edge of the sleeve by folding in about 1 centimetre or half an inch twice. Then stitch the hem in place, leaving a small opening to be able to thread some elastic through in a minute. Take some thin elastic and measure out a length that sits comfortably around your arm, and then cut out 2 pieces at that measurement. Using a safety pin, thread the elastic into the hem of the sleeve through the small opening. Once thread all the way through, stitch the 2 ends of elastic together with a zigzag stitch, and then stitch the opening closed. Then, using the gathering stitches we made before, gently pull the top 2 threads to gather up the top edge of the sleeve. And you should now have a nicely gathered edge like this. Then, with right sides together, pin the sleeve to the top, matching the side seams together. Stitch in place, and then remove the exposed gathering stitches from the sleeve with a seam ripper. And you should now have a top with some insanely beautiful puffy sleeves like this. Lastly, hem the bottom edge of the top by folding and pressing the fabric in by about 1 centimetre or half an inch. And then stitch the hem in place. And your puff sleeve top is complete. So, how does it look? So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you do have a go at making a puffy sleeve top for yourself, then I would love to see it. So be sure to tag me at Rosery Apparel when you share your photos on Instagram, and subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more videos like this one. Have a lovely day, and thanks for watching.